Hi and welcome. I'm Midnight Truth, and it's so nice to have you here tonight. Wherever you are right now, whether you're in bed, lying on the couch, or just looking for a quiet moment, I want you to know this time is for you. Take a deep breath in, and as you breathe out, feel the weight of the day start to fade. Let your mind settle, let your body relax, and let yourself simply be. There's no rush, no pressure, just this calm, quiet moment. If you'd like, you can close your eyes and imagine yourself in a peaceful place. Maybe it's a cozy room with soft, warm lighting. Or maybe it's under a starry sky with a gentle breeze brushing against you. Wherever you feel safe and calm, let yourself drift there. I know many of you use these stories to fall asleep, so before we begin, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Also, where are you from and what time is it there? Tonight's story is gentle and soothing, perfect to carry you into a deep, restful sleep. So settle in, get comfortable, and let's begin. I never thought I'd end up here. Sycamore Lane. Even the name sounds like something out of a cheap mystery novel, right? But when you're fresh off a divorce, nursing a bottle of wine like it's your only friend, and signing the dotted line on a modest old rental with more character than comfort, you stop questioning details like the street name. The house was cheap. Too cheap. A two-story, faded yellow home with ivy strangling one side and a roof that looked like it'd sigh and cave in during the next storm. The realtor had talked too fast, didn't meet my eyes much. Said things like vintage charm and great deal for the size. I nodded, pretended I didn't notice the faint smell of mildew or the uneven creak in the floorboards as I stepped inside. But I needed this. A reset. New town, new job, new me. That's what people say, isn't it? Reinvent yourself. Burn the old and start fresh. So I told myself the drafty windows and musty smell were just part of the process. The place needed some love, and I had time to give it. The first few days were quiet. I unpacked slowly, set up my bed upstairs, in a room with peeling wallpaper and a narrow closet that creaked open every night no matter how tightly I shut it. The kitchen had a rusted sink and a little breakfast nook where the sunlight poured in every morning like it was trying too hard to be cheerful. There were quirks, sure. The floors creaked when I walked, especially in the hall upstairs. One of the steps on the staircase let out a groan that sounded almost like a voice. And sometimes, the light in the hallway flickered when I passed it. But it's an old house. That's what I kept telling myself. Old houses have personality. Still, there was something off. The first time I noticed it was the second night. I'd just gotten into bed, book in hand, lamp casting a soft yellow light across the room. I heard it then, the sound of footsteps above me. Slow, deliberate. Heel, toe, heel, toe. Problem was, there's nothing above my bedroom. Just the attic. I froze, book still open in my lap, and strained to hear more. But it stopped. Just like that. I told myself it was the house settling. I laughed it off the next morning. I even made a joke about it when I met my neighbor, Mrs. Henley. She lived next door in a brick one-story with white trim and 2 mini wind chimes. Friendly enough. In her 60s, I'd guess, with a thick gray bun and a voice like sandpaper. She waved me over one morning while I was fumbling with the trash bins. "You're the one who moved into number 18?" she asked. I nodded. "Yeah, just a few days ago." She stared at the house like it had offended her once. Brave. Most folks don't last long there. I gave a nervous laugh. Why is that? Her eyes didn't blink. Odd things. Sounds. Lights turning on and off. One woman swore she saw someone in her bedroom at night. Thought it was a dream until she woke up with scratches on her back. She paused. The guy before her packed up and left in the middle of the night. Didn't even take his furniture. I shifted awkwardly. And no one investigated? "Oh, the police came once or twice," she said. "Never found anything. They don't like to talk about it. Folks around here just call it cursed." Cursed. Of course. I smiled politely, made an excuse about needing coffee, and walked back inside. But her words stayed with me. Cursed. That night, I had trouble sleeping. It wasn't just the usual creaks. There was a cold spot in the hallway. I mean ice cold, like someone had left a freezer door open. I held my hand out, and just like that, a rush of cold air blew past me. No windows open. No vents nearby. It felt like breath. I turned on every light in the house. Nothing. No signs of anyone. No shadows. No cold wind. Just the constant groaning of the floorboards and my own heartbeat hammering in my ears. I told myself again, old house, Old pipes, drafts, settling wood. It's fine, but I started locking my bedroom door at night. 3 days later, I found the door to the attic slightly open. I hadn't touched it. I remember standing there, hand halfway to the knob, not sure if I should open it or nail it shut forever. I reached up, pushed it open slowly. The stairs were steep, narrow, and smelled of dust and something else, something sharp and metallic. Blood? No, not blood. Just rust, maybe. I climbed slowly, every step groaning beneath me. The attic was surprisingly large, lit by a single dusty window. Cobwebs in the corners. Old boxes stacked high, and in the far corner, an old trunk. Black, leather-bound. No dust on it, like someone had touched it recently. I didn't open it. Not that day. Instead, I turned around and got out of there fast. But something changed after that. The sounds at night grew louder, more urgent. Doors slammed on their own. My name, I thought I heard it whispered once in the hallway mirror. My name. Soft. Drawn out. I stopped sleeping. I started drinking more. I looked up the property records at the local library one morning, pretending I was just curious. The house had been owned by a man named Alan Worth in the 1970s. Lived alone. Wasn't married. Didn't work, according to records. He was a researcher, one article said. Obsessive. Occult studies. Ritual magic. Necromancy. He disappeared. No body ever found. Neighbors reported strange lights and chanting at odd hours. Animals going missing. Pets acting violent. People said the basement reeked of burnt hair and wax. I didn't even know there was a basement. I went home that evening and found the attic door open again. Wider this time. And in the hallway, carved into the wall, a symbol I didn't recognize. Like a twisted star, jagged, like someone had done it in a rush. I washed it off with bleach. It came back the next day. I barely sleep now. The footsteps are heavier. There's whispering from the vents. And that black trunk in the attic. It's calling me. I don't remember climbing the attic stairs. I just remember standing in front of the trunk, hands shaking, sweat on my neck, even though the attic was cold. It was early, maybe 4 in the morning. I'd woken to footsteps again. Only this time they didn't stop above me. They moved, room to room, slow, deliberate, like someone was pacing, like they were waiting for me to get up. I grabbed a flashlight and followed the sounds. Of course, when I reached the hallway, they vanished. But the attic door, again, was open. And this time, I didn't hesitate. The trunk was still there, squat and black and too clean. Like it didn't belong to this dusty place. I got down on my knees and brushed my fingers across the latch. It wasn't locked. The lid groaned as I opened it. The inside smelled like rotting paper and something faintly sour. Inside was a stack of old notebooks, hardcover, yellowing, and brittle. There were candle stubs too, and bones. Tiny ones, maybe bird bones. Wrapped in cloth and tied with black string. I wanted to throw up. I took the top notebook and closed the trunk. Something in me said not to disturb the rest. Not yet. Back in my room, I flipped the notebook open. The handwriting was cramped, looping, desperate. The first page read, "The door is open. I can't close it." I tried. God forgive me, I tried. The rest was worse. The man, Alan Worth, had kept meticulous records of his experiments. That's what he called them. Experiments. But they weren't scientific. They were ritualistic. He wrote of voices in the walls, shapes in the corners, and a presence he called the Watcher. He believed he had summoned it, or maybe just awakened it. There were drawings, symbols like the one I found carved in the hallway. He said they came to him in dreams, that he'd see them burned behind his eyes when he blinked. Said they were part of a gate, something that could be opened but not closed. He wrote about the house like it was alive, breathing, changing, feeding. I didn't sleep that night. The next day, I skipped work. I sat on the kitchen floor, the notebook in my lap, rereading every page. There were more journals in the trunk. If this was the first, how much worse could the others be? At noon, someone knocked on my door. I almost didn't answer it. But the knocks came again, louder, more urgent. It was Mrs. Henley. She didn't smile this time. She looked tired, pale. She glanced behind me into the house like she expected to see someone standing there. "You've seen it, haven't you?" she asked. I opened my mouth. Nothing came out. She nodded slowly. "You should leave." "I can't." "Yes, you can," she said. "That thing in there, whatever it is, it doesn't want you reading about it. That's how it starts. You think you're just curious, but it feeds on attention. Every time you think about it, read about it, speak about it, it gets stronger. I stared at her. You're serious? My sister lived in that house, she said quietly. Back in the 90s. Stayed 3 months. Talked about shadows. Said the mirrors whispered when she looked too long. One night, she came running here barefoot, bleeding. She said he opened the door again. Then she tried to claw her own ears out. My stomach turned. What happened to her? She's in a facility now. Doesn't speak. Just draws circles and eyes over and over again. I wanted to shut the door. Pretend this wasn't happening. Pretend I was just overtired. Stressed. But I knew what I'd heard. What I'd read. That night, the scratching started. It came from inside the walls. Light at first, like mice maybe. But then it grew louder. More frantic. Like nails dragging through drywall. At midnight, the lights went out. The whole house went black. My phone wouldn't turn on. Flashlight. Dead. I lit a candle and sat in the living room, listening. The scratching moved. Down the hall. Across the ceiling. Closer. Then footsteps. Upstairs. But this time not slow. Running. I shot up, heart pounding, and grabbed the candle. I should have run out the door, but instead I ran up the stairs, candle trembling in my hand. There was no one there. But the attic door? Open. Of course. I should have shut it. Nailed it shut. Burned it. But something made me go up again. This time, the trunk was already open. And on top of the journals, laid out perfectly straight, was a piece of paper. Not yellowed like the others. Fresh. White. Ink still wet. It said, "He sees you now." My blood ran cold. Behind me, the attic door slammed shut. Hard. I dropped the candle and plunged into darkness. Then, breathing. Not mine. Close. So close I felt it on the back of my neck. I didn't move. I couldn't. Something brushed against my shoulder. Not a draft. Not wind. A hand. And then I screamed. I don't remember getting downstairs. I don't remember unlocking the front door or falling out onto the porch. I only remember the sound I heard as I fled. Laughter. Deep. Echoing. Not human. Since that night, things have changed. Mirrors fog when I pass. Shadows stretch longer than they should. I hear my name whispered from behind closed doors. And in the hallway, that symbol carved in the wall. It's glowing now. Faint. Red. Like it's alive. Like it's watching me. I haven't slept in 2 nights. Not really. I drift in and out, waking every hour to sounds that vanish the moment I sit up. Sometimes it's footsteps. Sometimes it's whispers. But last night, it was breathing. Heavy and slow, coming from just under the bed. I was too afraid to look. The mornings have started to feel worse than the nights. Maybe because the daylight doesn't chase anything away. It just hides it better. I woke up to the sound of the bathroom faucet running. I hadn't used it. I hadn't even gone near the bathroom. I approached the door carefully, every step a warning in my chest. The sound of water splashing into porcelain was clear. Sharp. But when I pushed the door open, the faucet was off. The sink was dry. And the mirror, fogged up. Like someone had just taken a hot shower. Only I hadn't used the shower in days. I wiped it with my palm. There was writing underneath the fog. A single word. Stay. I backed out, heart racing. The house was no longer just creaking or moaning. It was responding. It knew I was reading the journals. And something, or someone, wanted me to stay. The third journal from the trunk was different from the first 2. More frantic. The handwriting worse. Smudged. Like whoever wrote it had been shaking. Alan wrote that the Watcher had finally crossed over. He described waking up to the sound of chanting, words not in any language he knew. He said he began seeing things in mirrors. Not reflections. Visions. Of people screaming. Drowning. Burning. All inside the glass. He stopped sleeping. His final entry in that journal simply read, "It knows I know. That's enough." I shut the notebook and locked it in a drawer. Like that would help. I tried to go for a walk to clear my head. Outside, the street looked the same. Quiet, ordinary, boring. Mrs. Henley was watering her plants. She waved. I didn't wave back. Not because I didn't want to. I just couldn't. The air felt wrong. Like I wasn't supposed to be outside. Like the house was angry that I'd left. I went back after 10 minutes. I didn't even realize I'd started running until I hit the front steps. That night, I started covering the mirrors. Every one of them. Bathroom, bedroom, hall. I couldn't bear to look into them anymore. Not after what I'd seen the night before. Because when I passed the mirror in the hallway, just for a second, I didn't see my own reflection. I saw a version of me, but older, paler, eyes sunken and mouth open like it was screaming. And behind me, something tall, with eyes like burning coal and fingers too long to be human. When I turned around, there was nothing. But the mirror? It kept showing it, until I tore it down. At midnight, I woke up gasping. My bedroom window was open. I hadn't opened it. I stood up. My feet landed on something soft. Feathers. I looked down. A circle of black feathers around my bed, arranged perfectly, as if something had placed them there while I slept. I didn't scream. I couldn't. My throat closed up. Then I saw it. A figure standing at the far end of the hallway. Tall. Still. A silhouette darker than the dark. I couldn't make out a face. Just the feeling that it was looking at me. I shut the door and pressed my back against it. My hands were shaking too hard to turn the lock. And then it knocked. 3 times. Slow. Patient. I didn't answer. The next morning, the door was wide open. The hallway empty, but burned into the wood. 3 black fingerprints just under the doorknob. I called the local historical society that day, under the excuse of being a writer researching old town legends. The man who answered was polite at first. Then I gave him the address. There was a pause. "I'm sorry," he said. "That house is not part of our public archive. But it has a history, right?" Another pause. "I suggest," he said slowly, "you leave that place. And don't contact us again." Then he hung up. I started searching online. Forums, Reddit threads, paranormal blogs. I found someone, username Threshold Seeker, who claimed to have lived in the house in 2011. I messaged them. They replied almost instantly. "If you're still in that house, you need to stop looking into it. Stop reading the journals. Burn them. Whatever's there, it grows through knowledge. Every page you read, every time you think about it, you feed it." I wrote back asking what happened to them. No reply. Their profile was deleted 30 minutes later. I sat there, staring at the message, at the trunk, at the journals still waiting to be read. And then, like it sensed my hesitation, something began whispering. Not in my head, from the vent. Low, like a chant. The same word over and over again. "Stay, stay, stay." I screamed and backed away. The whispering got louder. From every vent, every wall, until the whole house was humming with it. Then silence. I ran to the kitchen and turned every light on. Sat in the corner, knife in hand, shaking. The lights flickered once, twice. Then everything went black. And in the darkness, I saw eyes. All around me. Not shining. Not glowing. Just there. Watching. I screamed until my throat burned. When the lights came back, I was alone. The house smelled of sulfur and something older. Decay. Like something dead had been here. I tried to leave. I swear I tried. But when I opened the front door, it led to the hallway. My hallway. The one inside the house. I shut it. Tried the back door. Same thing. Every door now opened to somewhere inside. No matter where I went, I was still in the house. I didn't leave the kitchen that night. I couldn't. The house wouldn't let me. Every door I opened led back into itself. The front door took me to the upstairs hallway. The back door opened into the closet. Even the windows, when I tried to crawl out, just showed more rooms. Endless, looping versions of the same hallways, the same doors, the same shadows. I was trapped. But worse than that, the house had changed. I felt it breathing. Not literally, but I don't know how else to describe it. The walls pulsed sometimes, like a heartbeat. The floor felt warm beneath my feet. Alive. Watching. Waiting. The whispers started again just before sunrise. Soft, like a lullaby made from broken promises. They came from the vents, the walls, even from the mirror I had nailed face down under the bed. I could feel the sound in my chest. It wasn't saying stay anymore. It was saying follow, and it wanted me to go downstairs. I hadn't been to the basement since I moved in. The realtor had mentioned it, casually, like a footnote. "There's a basement," she'd said, but the previous owner sealed the inner room. No key. It's not part of the inspection. Most folks just ignore it. That stuck with me. A sealed inner room? At the time, I shrugged it off. Probably a root cellar or something. But now backslash. The house wanted me to go there. I waited until the sun was high before opening the basement door. It groaned. The smell hit me immediately. Damp earth, mildew, rust, and something that reminded me of wet copper. Blood, maybe. The stairs creaked under my weight. I moved slowly, flashlight in one hand, the other on the railing. The light flickered once. I shook it, praying it wouldn't die. The basement was small. One open room. Stone walls. Dirt floor. But against the back wall, half covered in rotting tarps and thick spider webs, was a door. Exactly where the sealed room was supposed to be. But it wasn't sealed anymore. The boards had been ripped off. Not cut. Not unscrewed. Torn. Deep scratches covered the wood, like something had clawed its way out. The handle was iron, cold to the touch. It burned my skin, just a little. Enough to make me flinch. I turned it. The door opened without a sound. The room beyond was pitch black. I stepped inside. The air was freezing. My breath came out in white clouds. The smell was stronger here, dank, sweet, like spoiled meat. The flashlight flickered again, then steadied. That's when I saw them. Symbols, carved into the walls, the floor, even the ceiling. The same ones from Alan's journals. Circles inside circles. Eyes. Gates. Something like a key made of bones. In the center of the room was a stone altar. Low and wide, stained dark. Something metallic glinted on it. I moved closer. A knife. Ornate. Curved. Blackened with age. Next to it, another journal. This one was bound in red leather, cracked and dry. I picked it up. My fingers trembled. Inside, the handwriting wasn't Alan's. It was worse. Shaky. Almost childlike. This is the last record. He is awake now. The door cannot be closed. Not without blood. Page after page, the writer described visions. Waking up covered in ash. Hearing bells that no one else could hear. Dreams of fire and screaming and a tower of teeth. And the Watcher. Always the Watcher. They said he lived between reflections. That every time you looked into a mirror, he saw you. And the more you acknowledged him, the closer he came. There was a ritual in the back of the book. A way to bind him. Temporarily. But it required sacrifice. Blood. Fire. Isolation. And the knife. The last line read, "If you found this, it's too late." I dropped the book. That's when the door slammed shut behind me. The flashlight died. I was in total darkness. Then I heard the breathing again. Only this time, it was closer. Right behind me. Wet and ragged. Hungry. I turned around. Nothing. But I felt it. Right there. Then something grabbed my arm. Cold. Slimy. Like fingers made of ice and rock. I screamed, dropped the knife, and scrambled backward, hitting the wall hard enough to knock the air from my lungs. The room started to shake. The symbols glowed faintly, red at first, then pulsing blue. The whispers rose to a roar, then silence. When I opened my eyes, I was alone again. The door opened, light pouring in from the basement. I ran. I didn't look back. I got upstairs and collapsed in the hallway, gasping. On the wall opposite me, the symbol had changed. It was no longer carved. It was bleeding. Thick, black ichor oozed from the lines, dripping down the wallpaper. And as I watched, it spelled out a word. Soon. The mirrors stayed covered after that night. Bed sheets, towels, even cardboard, anything to keep the glass from showing. But I could still feel them, like they were eyes, blinking beneath the surface, waiting for me to slip. I knew it was coming closer. I could feel it now in everything I did. The silence in the house was no longer silence. It was a hum, a breath, a low note constantly vibrating through the walls, the floor, even the air. When I closed my eyes, I saw the symbols from the basement, burned into the backs of my eyelids. Spinning, shifting. That morning, I found another note slid under the front door. This one was handwritten. The ink smudged, as if written in a hurry. Don't let the mirrors show your face at night. That's how it remembers you. No name, no explanation, just that one sentence. I opened the door to look outside. There was no one there, just the street. Still, quiet, dead. That night, I dreamed of fire again, of the stone altar, of something crawling across the floor toward me. Long limbs, too many joints, skin like black glass cracking with every movement. Its eyes were hollow, but they bled. When I woke, there was soot on my pillow, actual soot, and the house smelled like something had been burned. I got up and checked every room. Everything seemed untouched, until I reached the bathroom. The mirror I had covered there was uncovered. My reflection was staring back at me. Only, it wasn't moving. I stepped forward. It stayed still. I raised my hand. The reflection didn't follow. Instead, it smiled. A slow, crooked, unnatural grin that stretched too far. And then it started banging on the other side of the mirror, as if it was trapped, as if it wanted out. I ran. I grabbed a hammer and shattered the glass. It fell in chunks to the sink, glittering like ice. But when I looked down, there was no reflection in the shards, only a black void. And from that void, I heard my own voice whisper, "Let me in." I backed away and didn't stop until I was in the backyard, barefoot, heart hammering. The grass was cold and damp. My breath came in clouds. And behind me, in the house, every light flicked on. All at once, one by one, the covered mirrors inside were uncovered. I saw it happen from the windows. The sheets pulled off, some by invisible hands, some by force, flying across the room. And in each mirror, I saw something standing where I should have been. Something wearing my face. Something older, worn, twisted. I couldn't go back inside. I knew that. But the house wouldn't let me leave, either. I circled to the front, tried the door, still open to the hallway. I was trapped again. I sat on the porch until dawn. It was the only place that felt neutral, neither in nor out. At sunrise, I saw Mrs. Henley again. She was on her porch, watering her flowers. Like nothing was wrong. I called to her. She looked up, squinting. "You all right, dear?" she asked. Something's wrong with the house," I said. She paused. Her eyes dropped to her flowers. Then she nodded. "We tried to warn the last one," she said quietly. "What?" She set her watering can down. "The man before you. Lived there less than 2 months. Came out screaming one night. Screamed about faces. Said he saw himself in the walls. Said the mirrors were eating him alive. What happened to him?" She met my eyes. "He disappeared." I didn't know what to say. Her lips trembled slightly. "We don't talk about it. People around here, we leave the house alone. If someone moves in, we let them be. But the moment you looked back into that house after you left, it pulled you back in." She turned and went inside. I stood there, shaking. I didn't remember looking back. But maybe I had. Later that day, I went through the journals again. One of the final ones, more of Alan's writing, but weaker now, talked about the mirror trap. He said it was how the Watcher marked you, reflected you, copied you. Every time you looked into a mirror and saw something off, just slightly off, that was it learning, mimicking, preparing. Alan wrote that he tried to destroy every mirror, every reflection, even still water. But it didn't matter. The house remembered him. I flipped to the last page. He's not trying to scare you. He's trying to take your place. I felt sick. I thought of the smile in the mirror, the banging, the voice that sounded like mine. What if he already had? That night, I slept with the lights on. Every room bright. At 3:03 a.m., all the bulbs exploded at once. And in the dark, I saw my reflection standing in the hallway mirror, waving. I didn't sleep again. I didn't sleep at all that night. I sat on the floor in the living room, the shattered glass crunching beneath me every time I moved. My heart was pounding, my mind racing through everything I'd learned, and everything I still didn't understand. The Watcher, the mirrors, the sealed door in the basement, the black symbols bleeding on the walls, and now, my own reflection waving at me like a cruel joke. By morning, I knew I had to dig deeper. I went back to the trunk, the journals, the notebooks. I opened the red leather-bound one again, the one I found in the basement sealed room. The more I read, the more I felt like I was uncovering not just the house's history, but a story of obsession and madness. The original owner, a man named Elias Harrow, wasn't just into occult rituals. He was consumed by them. He believed he could open a gateway between our world and another, a place where the Watcher lived. According to his writings, the Watcher was neither fully human nor fully spirit, something ancient and hungry that needed to cross over. Elias wrote of his experiments, using mirrors as portals and sacrifices to keep the barrier thin. He described the growing presence in the house, the cold spots, the whispering voices, the feeling of eyes watching from every shadow. Then something changed. The journal's tone shifted to panic and despair. Elias spoke of breaking the seal too early and of the Watcher slipping through, not fully but enough to infect the house with its presence. There was a final entry, scrawled and almost unreadable. "The mirror gateway is open. The Watcher can no longer be contained. I'm trapped here, watching it crawl through the glass, looking for a host. Someone to replace. Someone to pull in. If you find this, run. Don't look into the mirrors. Don't listen to the whispers. Don't answer the knocking. It feeds on fear and knowledge. It's patient and cruel." The last page was torn, missing. I tried to ignore the cold creeping up my spine as I closed the journal, but it was impossible. That's when I noticed something new. On the floor, near the journal, was a small shard of mirror. Not broken glass, but a piece of reflective silver, like a polished shard. and on its surface was a symbol. The same symbol I had seen bleeding on the hallway wall. The house was changing. It was marking me. As I stared, the shard's reflection darkened. A shadow moved across it. Not my shadow. Something else. Something waiting. That night, I didn't cover the mirrors. I didn't dare. Instead, I stared at my reflection, watching for any signs, any movement. But it was silent. Still. Empty. Until the clock struck midnight. Then, in the silence, I heard it. A slow, steady knocking, coming from inside the wall. The knocking started exactly at midnight, soft at first, like a faint tapping. Then it grew louder, more insistent, as if someone, or something, was trying to get through the walls themselves. I sat frozen on the edge of my bed, heart hammering so hard I thought it might burst through my chest. The sound was coming from the living room wall, right behind where the old framed mirror used to hang before I smashed it. I told myself it was just the house settling. Old houses creak, pipes rattle, animals crawl on the walls. But this was different. It wasn't random. It had a rhythm. It was deliberate. I swallowed the lump in my throat and stood up. Every step I took felt heavier than the last, as if the house was resisting me, pulling me back. When I reached the wall, the knocking stopped. The silence that followed was worse, like the pause before a scream. I pressed my ear against the plaster, expecting to hear nothing. Instead, I heard a whisper, so faint I barely caught it. My name, Sufi. Cold fingers traced down my spine. I jerked away, fumbling for the flashlight. I aimed it at the wall. The beam caught something, an outline, a faint shimmering in the paint. The shape of a door, like the sealed room in the basement, but hidden here. I pressed my hand to the wall, and suddenly it felt wrong, soft, like skin. The wall seemed to pulse beneath my palm. Then the knocking started again, louder and faster. Not from outside, but from inside the wall. Let me in. The voice was low, desperate, broken. I stumbled backward, crashing into the hallway mirror. My reflection stared back. But it wasn't me. The eyes were black pits. The mouth twisted into a grim smile. Behind the glass, the knocking continued, now accompanied by a wet, scraping sound. It was scratching, clawing, trying to break through. I backed away, heart racing, breath shallow. Then, the mirror cracked. One long spiderweb fracture spread across the glass, like a smile. And the knocking stopped. Silence. I wanted to run, to get out. But my feet felt stuck, nailed to the floor. The air turned ice cold, colder than anything I'd ever felt. And then the whispering started, dozens of voices overlapping, chanting words I couldn't understand, but that made my skin crawl. I covered my ears, but the sound was inside my head, inside my bones. Suddenly, a cold weight settled on my chest, pushing me down. I gasped, struggling to breathe. I looked up and saw it, behind the cracked mirror, just beyond the glass, a face. Not my own. Bald, pale, eyes full of hunger and rage. The thing pressed its face against the glass, mouth opening wide in a silent scream. I screamed back. The glass shattered, spraying cold shards everywhere. And then I was alone. The knocking stopped. The house was silent. For the first time in days, I could breathe. But as I gathered myself, my eyes caught something on the floor, another mirror shard, reflecting the broken hallway behind me. And in the shard, something moved. Something watching. The next morning, I woke up on the cold floor of the living room, glass shards embedded in my arms and legs. The air was thick with dust and the lingering scent of burnt candles. My throat was raw from screaming, but the house was eerily quiet. For a moment, I dared to hope that maybe the nightmare was over. I stood slowly, clutching my arms where the cuts stung. I avoided looking at any mirrors. There were few left intact, but their absence did nothing to calm my nerves. If anything, it made the emptiness feel heavier, like the house was holding its breath, waiting. I decided to get out, pack a bag, leave this cursed place behind. But as I moved toward the door, the floorboards creaked loudly behind me. I froze. Turning slowly, I saw it, a shadow stretched across the hallway wall. Long, distorted, almost human in shape, but wrong. It didn't move like a normal shadow, more like it slid, shifting unnaturally across the peeling wallpaper. I blinked, and it wasn't there. Or was it? That's when I heard it. The soft footsteps. Slow, heavy, coming from the far end of the hall. I didn't want to look. I didn't want to know what was there. But something about the footsteps, too deliberate, too rhythmic, drew me in. I crept down the hallway, flashlight trembling in my hand. The footsteps stopped just ahead, by the last closed door on the right. I held my breath. The door shook slightly, like something was pushing from the other side. Then it opened, slowly, creaking on rusty hinges. No one was there, just darkness. I stepped inside, the beam of light cutting through the black. The room was empty, except for a single chair facing the wall. As I moved closer, I noticed something written on the wall in faded red paint. "He waits behind the shadow." Suddenly, the door slammed shut behind me. I spun around, pounding on the door, screaming for help. The air grew cold again, and then, from the corner of the room, a shape moved. Not quite solid, more like smoke shaped into a person. It glided toward me, voice low and echoing. "You cannot leave. Not until he's taken what he wants." I backed up, heart racing, breath freezing in my chest. The shadow reached out with fingers that seemed to dissolve into mist. I closed my eyes. When I opened them, the room was empty, the door unlocked. I didn't wait. I ran. But as I reached the hallway, I saw the shadow once more. Waiting, watching, and I knew this house wasn't finished with me yet. The nights had grown unbearable. Every sound in the house echoed like a thunderclap. The creaks and groans weren't just the house settling anymore. They were deliberate. There was something alive here, something hungry. I couldn't keep running from it. I had to face the basement again. The sealed door at the bottom of those stairs was the heart of this nightmare. I knew it held the answers, or maybe it held the thing that had been stalking me since day one. That morning, I forced myself to go down. I didn't sleep a wink the night before, my mind running wild with every possible horror. But exhaustion didn't help. It only sharpened the fear. The staircase creaked beneath my feet, each step slower than the last. The dim light bulb above flickered weakly, throwing monstrous shadows that danced on the cracked walls. The smell hit me first, a heavy, sickly sweetness mixed with dust and something sharp, like iron. When I reached the bottom, the air turned ice cold, biting into my lungs. The basement was darker than before. The far corner, the one where the sealed door waited, was cloaked in shadow, almost pulsing with a life of its own. The door was old, made of thick wood banded in rusted iron. The latch creaked ominously as I lifted it, the sound swallowed instantly by the silence that followed. I hesitated just a moment before pushing the door open. Inside was a small, windowless room no bigger than a closet. The walls were scrawled with symbols in a dark red that looked disturbingly like dried blood. I could still smell the metallic tang lingering in the air, as if the paint itself was alive. In the center, a wooden table stood, scarred and stained with age. On it lay a large leather-bound book, thick and heavy. It looked ancient, almost out of place. I wiped a layer of dust off the cover and opened it carefully. The pages were brittle, yellowed with time, but the ink was still clear. The pages were filled with diagrams, circles surrounded by strange runes, sketches of mirrors that held faces trapped inside their glass. My eyes scanned the text until I found a journal entry signed Elias Harrow. Asterisk, the watcher hungers for a soul to take. It moves through reflections, searching for the weak and broken. The mirror door is both prison and gateway. I fear I have failed to keep it sealed. Tonight, I perform the last ritual to contain it. But if this fails, may God have mercy on the next who enters this house. Asterisk. A shiver ran down my spine. This was no ordinary haunting. This was a curse born from dark obsession and ritual. I felt the weight of the room pressed down on me, the shadows growing deeper, thicker. Suddenly, the temperature dropped even further. My breath fogged before me like a ghost. I heard a faint whispering from the darkness, soft, almost inaudible, but chilling nonetheless. The book's pages began to turn on their own, fluttering faster and faster, making a soft rustling like dry leaves in a storm. I reached out to stop it, but the book slammed shut with a heavy thud, sending a jolt through my body. My heart pounded in my ears as the shadows shifted. A low growl echoed from the corner of the room. It was guttural, like something ancient and angry. I could see a form emerging, shapeless at first, like smoke caught in a draft. Then it grew more solid, coalescing into something humanoid but twisted. Its eyes were pits of darkness that seemed to pull at my soul. Frozen with fear, I stumbled backward, but the cold fingers of the dark thing wrapped around my ankle, gripping tight like iron chains. I screamed, wrenching free and scrambling up the stairs, desperate to escape the crushing cold and weight of the basement's curse. When I burst through the basement door into the main hall, the house was silent again, but the front door was wide open, swinging slowly on its hinges. I didn't hesitate. I rushed outside, gasping for fresh air, my skin prickling like I had touched something poisonous. But as I looked back, I felt it. Eyes on me, watching from the darkened windows, waiting. I knew then that the house wasn't finished. No matter how far I ran, it would find me, because this was no longer just a home. It was a prison. The morning after my terrifying basement encounter, I knew I couldn't face this nightmare alone. I needed help, someone who knew the area, the history, anything about the house and its strange past. I decided to visit my neighbor, an elderly woman named Mrs. Caldwell. She lived just next door, in a house that looked as old and weathered as mine, but somehow less threatening. Her yard was tidy, with well-kept flower beds, and she always waved politely when I passed. I knocked on her door, feeling more nervous than I wanted to admit. The door creaked open slowly, revealing a thin woman with sharp eyes that seemed to look right through me. "Can I help you, dear?" she asked, her voice calm but serious. I hesitated before blurting out, "I need to ask you about the house I just moved into, the one next door. Do you know anything about its history?" I've been hearing things, strange noises, and I found some old journals in the basement." Her face darkened, and she motioned for me to come inside. We sat in her dimly lit living room, the air smelling faintly of old wood and lavender. She pulled out a worn photo album filled with yellowed pictures of the neighborhood from decades past. "This house," she began quietly, "has always been trouble. The original owner, Elias Harrow, was obsessed with the occult. The townspeople whispered about him, but no one ever got close enough to know what he really did. They say he was trying to open a door to something beyond our world." She looked at me intently. "Several tenants have moved in over the years, but few stayed long. Some ran out screaming about curses. One man was found wandering the street, babbling about voices in the walls and footsteps following him at night." I swallowed hard. I thought I was imagining things, but it's not just me. Mrs. Caldwell nodded. "The house has a way of pulling people in, making them see things that aren't there, or maybe things that shouldn't be seen. They say mirrors are the worst, like windows into that other place." She handed me an old newspaper clipping. The headline read, "Tenant flees haunted house after strange sightings." The article detailed a man who had lived there a few years ago. He'd reported hearing footsteps, seeing shadowy figures, and feeling cold hands grab him in the night. He fled after just 1 month, leaving his belongings behind. "I tried to warn you," Mrs. Caldwell said softly. "That house feeds on fear and loneliness. You have to be careful." I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cold morning air. "Is there any way to stop it?" I asked. She shook her head. "Only the original rituals Elias performed might have held it back. But those are lost now. And whatever's in that house, it's patient. It waits for the right moment." Her eyes flicked toward my house, then back to me. "Be careful, Sufi. You're not alone, but that house, it's different. It's dangerous." I left her house feeling heavier than when I arrived. The weight of the house is past, and whatever haunted it was now real. I had to find a way to fight back. Before the house took me completely. After my conversation with Mrs. Caldwell, I knew I couldn't keep running or hiding. The house's hold on me was growing stronger every day, and whatever it was, this watcher Elias Harrow wrote about, it wasn't going to stop until it claimed me. I spent the next few days digging through the journal I had found in the basement. The entries were filled with cryptic notes, diagrams, and instructions, rituals meant to seal the dark presence within the house. Elias's handwriting was frantic, desperate, and often crossed out, as if he doubted the power of his own words. One entry stood out. Asterisk, "The mirror door is the key. To close it, the ritual must be performed at midnight, with salt, candles, and the blood of the willing. The presence feeds on fear. One must stand firm, resist its whispers, or it will consume the soul." Asterisk. My hands shook as I read those lines. Blood of the willing? I was the only one here. That meant me. That night, I prepared. I gathered salt, candles, and the journal. I drew the ritual circle Elias had painstakingly detailed on the basement floor. As midnight approached, the air grew thick and cold. The house seemed to hold its breath. Shadows lengthened and twisted into shapes that slithered along the walls. I lit the candles, their flickering flames barely piercing the darkness. The mirror shards I had collected from the living room were arranged carefully inside the circle. I took a deep breath and cut my palm, letting the blood drip onto the floor inside the circle. The whispers began immediately, soft, enticing, cruel. "Come to us, join us." I clenched my fists, repeating a prayer I barely remembered from childhood. The ground beneath me vibrated. The mirrors began to shimmer, reflecting impossible images, faces twisted in agony, eyes staring back from another world. Then the temperature dropped sharply, freezing my breath in the air. From the shattered mirror shards, a cold hand reached out, grabbing at my ankle. I pulled back, stumbling but stayed inside the circle. The whispers turned to screams. "Let me in." I raised my voice, louder, stronger. "Begone. You have no power here." For a moment, everything was still. The coldness faded, the whispers died. Then, slowly, the mirrors cracked, breaking apart into dust. The oppressive weight lifted. I collapsed, exhausted but relieved. For the first time in weeks, the house was silent. But as I lay there, my eyes drifted to the corner. A shadow moved, flickering, faint. It wasn't gone. It was waiting. The first pale light of dawn filtered through the grimy windows, casting long, ghostly shadows across the worn wooden floors. The house was silent now, or at least quieter than it had been in weeks. Yet the silence didn't feel like peace. It felt heavy, like the calm before a storm, like the breath held tight before a scream. I moved slowly, methodically packing what I could into my bags. Each movement felt weighted, as if invisible hands pressed down on my shoulders, urging me to stay and warning me not to. I kept glancing around the rooms that had become my prison, now my battleground. The wallpaper peeled in curling strips. The floorboards creaked with every tentative step, as if whispering secrets only they could hear. The air hung thick with the stale scent of dust, cold stone, and something else, something metallic and sharp that I could never quite identify. I paused at the top of the basement stairs, staring into the yawning darkness below. That sealed door still loomed there, silent but alive in my mind. The memory of the cold grip at my ankle, the voices that begged and screamed, lingered like frost beneath my skin. I forced myself to look away and carried my bags toward the front door. As I moved through the hallway, the house seemed to close in around me. The shadows shifted with every flicker of the fading candlelight, and the wooden floor groaned underfoot like a warning. I reached the door and hesitated, fingers resting on the cold brass handle. I could almost feel eyes on me from every corner, the house's gaze heavy and expectant. Taking a deep breath, I turned the handle and pushed the door open. The outside air was crisp and cool, filled with the early morning songs of birds and the faint rustle of leaves in a gentle breeze. The neighborhood was quiet, peaceful, and for a moment, almost normal. I stepped outside, the wooden door closing behind me with a slow, ominous creak. The lock clicked in place, sounding louder than it should have in the stillness. The sun began to rise higher, bathing the street in soft, golden light that seemed to promise safety and warmth. I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe I was free. But then, from the corner of my eye, I caught a flicker of movement in the window of the old house. A shadow detached itself from the darkness, a figure standing still and watching me. Its shape was indistinct, but those eyes caught the light, cold, hard, unblinking. Like the house itself was alive and had chosen to mark me as its prisoner forever. I wanted to look back, to confront it, but my feet refused to move toward the house. Instead, I quickened my pace down the sidewalk, the gravel crunching beneath my shoes. The footsteps began then, soft, almost imperceptible at first, but growing louder and more deliberate. Step after step, they echoed behind me, matching my pace, closing the distance. I dared not glance back. Fear slammed into my chest like a physical blow. I felt the breath of something cold at the back of my neck, a chill that seeped deep into my bones. I ran without looking back, heart hammering so loudly I was sure it would burst. Even now, days, maybe weeks, after leaving that cursed house, I still hear those footsteps in the silence. Sometimes late at night, when the world is still, I swear I hear the scrape of nails against wood or the faint whisper of breath that isn't mine. I've changed my number, moved cities, and avoided mirrors in the dark, but the feeling won't leave. Because that house doesn't just trap souls, it follows them. It waits, patient, silent. And one day, I know I'll hear those footsteps again. Because the darkness that lives there never truly goes away. It only waits for the next person to open the door. And I fear that next time, it won't be me running from it.